problem of scale is nothing new. This idea of how to govern the population numbers has been discussed and debated since ancient times. Aristotle believed that 300,000 was the limit for republicanism. I recently watched several videos discussing the issues of scale from Liberty professor Dr. Don Livingston. I'm going to summarize and kind of look at some of those lectures and discuss the problems with scale here today. Population growth in the world and the United States has looked at the issue of scale and political order for many years. In fact, the United Nations since 1954 has been looking at population and policy formulation. Policies have been discussed throughout the world. The UN looks at issues surrounding population growth of such things as poverty, environmental, human rights, and religious differences. Now, when discussing the problem of scale within the United States, those same issues are important when considering governance. We are really looking at two major thoughts of governing here in the United States, the Hobbesian and then the Althusian models of political societies. Many of our founding fathers were probably Althusians, which meant that you could have a large republic if you federate them. Interestingly, when the Constitution was ratified, there were 3 states that did so with the belief they could secede if needed. This Althusian view was lost after the American Civil War. Then after the Civil War, Lincoln advocated for a more Hobbesian view, which would form a civil association and a sovereign political states that could not withdraw from this. The United States has operated under this Hobbesian thought ever since. But is it time for change? We have seen big political changes such as the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989, which was the largest democratic revolution in modern history. Dr. Livingston mentioned 2 different polls in the United States in which the idea of secession is gaining more public interest. The problem of scale is centered around this idea of how to govern a vast amount of territory and an enormous population that continues to grow. With recent political unrest, perhaps the United States is indeed moving towards a paradigm shift from maybe a more Hobbesian to a more Althusian political society. In a 2010 article, The Problem of Metropolitan Governance and the Politics of Scale, author Kevin Cox looks at solutions to these problems of scale by studying one American metropolitan area. Cox looks at the growth of power, the geographic advantages of a water system and central location. He looks at the economic power and in this particular city that it wields. In conclusion, Cox identifies, and I quote, "Metropolitan fragmentation is endemic in the United States and a continuing challenge," end quote. What is gained from this article is twofold. First, there is a problem of scale and governance and policy in the United States, and secondly, no one model is an exact fit for each metropolitan area. Dr. Livingston mentions 3 types of society, each with their own pros and cons: the Althusian citizen, the Althusian symbiont, and the Hobbesian subject. And to quote back with that article, the United Nations Population Conferences by Jason Finkel and Alison McIntosh, they say, and I quote, "In many countries throughout the developing world, the standard of living has improved, life expectancy is increased, and in some cases dramatically," end quote. So if there is to be a paradigm shift in the United States from a Hobbesian to an Althusian policies, or even how or when that could take place still remains to be seen. Now, what's interesting about all this is I stand here in front of a lake called Doe Run Lake. This lake has a trail that goes all the way around it. It's just under 3-mile trail, and it would take you about 40 to 45 minutes to hike it. Now, the problem with trying to take scale, the size and scale, is to take that idea of 15 minutes per mile and hike around this trail. Because then I could look at the North Kaibab Trail on the Grand Canyon. It's a 14-mile trail. This 14-mile trail, it's nothing back, so it's a total of 14 miles there and 14 back, so it's 28 miles. So I take that and I say, well, hey, if I compare that to this trail, I could get that trail done in 7 hours approximately. The problem is that there's so much more that we don't know about. If you were just to do that, you could end up becoming hydrated. There's such an elevation change from going from the top of the rim to the bottom. And I think that's one of the things we see with problems of scale, is that there's also the unknown. You know, if there were some type of paradigm shift in the United States, would these other things work, or do we have a system that is better than others? We don't know. So I think the problem sometimes with size and scale is we try to take other things and put that in place and see, well, if this works here, perhaps it could work here. And I think we're just in an unknown. I've enjoyed this class, and I enjoyed the Livingston videos, and good luck with any other studies you guys have, and enjoy your Christmas break. Have a great day.